Hello everyone, welcome to United and Everything Football. This is AFCON Daily. We've been bringing you a series from the 7th of January. Finally, AFCON is here with us. Today, the host nation, the Ivory Coast, will be coming up against Guinea-Bissau, a game that we'll be previewing today. And as you know, we've been doing a preview of all the groups, so we finished that yesterday. So if you've not seen all of the previews, go through our previous episodes. You will get to know exactly what we've been discussing and what to expect in everything that has got to do with this year's AFCON. Now we are getting into action, proper action. The games are going to begin. And I have a very interesting guest with me today, follows the African game so keenly. When we come back from this break, I will introduce my guest and then we will get into the issue. As usual, remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well. Please, the subscription is very, very important to us. So always remember, you see that subscription there, hit on it and hit on the bell. And also like and share the videos if you're really enjoying everything that we're giving to you here. We promise to give you a lot more during this AFCON season. We are going for a break. When we come back, we get into the issues. Okay, so we are back from our quick break here on AFCON Daily. Today I'm joined by a very, very interesting man. He's called Scott Gillan. Scott follows the African game keenly. I've known Scott for almost 4 to 5 years now. He's provided. If you are following us on X or if you're on the X app, you'd obviously see a lot of the things that he's been discussing, profiling players, profiling teams. He does a lot of work around the Ghana football as well. So if you follow him on X, you definitely know Scott very, very well. Scott, great to have you on the show with us today. I hope you are doing very well.
Thank you, Kwame. Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. And happy to be joining you today.
Great to have you. Great to have you. So AFCON is here with us. I don't know. First, why interest in African football? You seem to be following a lot of African football. Why interest in African football?
I think it started when Richard Kingston briefly moved in next to me.
Oh,
and he had
wow.
a bit of an ill-fated spell at Birmingham City, which some people might remember. He ended up, I think the Birmingham City owner, one of Gold or Sullivan, had some quite disparaging comments about Richard Kingston at the end of his time there. And I think he fired back as well. So I think it was a bit of an unhappy year for him. But whilst he was there, I think it was the AFCON 2008 happened in Ghana.
Yeah.
And his son was with him, and I watched some of the games with his son, and there was quite a lot of excitement. Obviously, Ghana in the AFCON, could they break the dry spell at home? And it was, it wasn't quite to be in the end, but that kind of attracted my interest. And then obviously the World Cup in 2010, I was still following, and I think another kind of slightly heartbreaking situation for Ghana. Not long preceded before that by a heartbreaking AFCON 2010 as well. So I suppose that was my introduction, was following Ghana and being interested in Ghana, and then constantly suffering kind of heartbreak at tournaments. And then sort of since then, I guess, just being more interested in generally how African football, I think, has contributed to that sort of sense of national identity in Southern African countries. And I do think it's a bit different in that sense.
That's great. That's great. So those who don't know, this is the reason why Scott follows a lot of African football and developed interest for the game here. Now, Scott, let's get AFCON starts today. What's been your general impression of the African game after you started following it? If I'm safe to say from 2010 or 2008, coming till now, you've been following the African game. How do teams win AFCON from what you've observed?
I think one of the beauties of the African game is its diversity, and it's the willingness of teams, whether they're kind of comparatively minnows or kind of the big guns, to sort of play their own way. You see teams freshly arriving at AFCON, the first time they've ever been, looking to play out from the back, sort of benefiting from perhaps having the cohesive squads, players that have played a lot together, whether it's for their clubs in, for example, domestic leagues, or whether they've just spent a lot of time together in youth programs in the national team setups. coming up against the big behemoths with players sort of scattered across the entire world who come together on kind of shorter moments and then try and pull something together and let their kind of star quality shine through. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about it, is that diversity, is the way in which the teams play their way, try and sort of embrace their strengths. And I also think there's an aspect of it that the beauty of international football, I think generally, is it's so high variance. And I think the way in which there's that diversity in the African game almost contributes to that kind of high variance nature. Sort of some of the bigger teams still play quite direct, stodgy football. Some of the smaller sides might play more creatively. Tends to be a lot more dribbling, particularly kind of sub-Saharan African nations tend to sort of dribble the ball, West Africa in particular. And so you see kind of outstanding dribbling moments. I think there's also kind of more long shooting that you see in African football than perhaps we see in kind of in European football. But that, because of the variance of international football, that long shot that perhaps wouldn't be particularly memorable in a 38-game season is suddenly a huge deal in a sort of 3-game group or a knockout stage match. So I think those are some of the things that are perhaps a bit different. And I guess the other aspects of the games tend to be slightly less compact, which I think also tends to give rise to sort of more attacking moments, more isolation moments where players can dribble, where players get the opportunity to shoot from range, perhaps through less crowded areas. And so all these things kind of contribute again to this kind of diversity and this high variance nature of the AFCON, which makes it so enjoyable.
One key thing that we've observed is the amount of goals scored in games. I mean, the last AFCON, for instance, I mean, in the group stages, we were not seeing a lot more goals, especially in the first round. I mean, after the Cameroon-Burkina game that gave us 3 goals, a lot of the games were ending 0-0, 1-0. What do you think really accounts for that? Is it from a purely technical point of view? Is it that teams are not having very good strikers, or the quality of the chances being created, or teams are very strong and compact in defense and all of that? What do you really make of that?
I think it's a few things. I think it's largely tactical. I think it's the lack of compactness that teams have, leading to a kind of greater emphasis on individual moments coming out. There's less sort of cohesive build-up situations, less cohesive creative situations, because you simply don't have as many bodies in forward areas a lot of the time, because teams tend to be a bit more spread out. I think there is more long shooting, so I think that has a tendency to lead to kind of less high quality chances being created if teams are shooting more often. But also, I do think that teams have perhaps become more organised defensively, and then we're seeing sort of some of the bigger nations, even nations like Egypt, for example, in the last AFCON, embracing, I think, the move in international football towards trying to understanding that sort of high variance nature of it, knowing that clean sheets essentially are a key part of winning. I think that's one of the things that Gareth Southgate, when England did some research, found, was that if you keep a clean sheet in international football, obviously it drastically improves your chance of winning, and that they're a key indicator of success. And I think that's more teams, even some of the big teams, moving towards that model. And it will be interesting to see this tournament, because I think some more of the big teams are playing slightly more expansive football. The Ivory Coast, who obviously we're going to talk about shortly, being one of them. Egypt actually being another one. South Africa, for example, other nations like that playing more expansive football than we saw perhaps at the last edition. Does that mean that we're going to see more goals now, or are we going to still see this sort of, so again, that sort of highly diverse, some teams trying to be stodgy, some teams trying to be creative, but the lack of kind of cohesion, the lack of the greater reliance on individual quality, the bigger spaces that they're operating in, and kind of perhaps slightly at times kind of poor decision making because of those isolation situations, leading to a lack of kind of quality chance creation.
All right, let's zoom straight into the game today. The Ivory Coast coming up against Guinea-Bissau. The Ivory Coast, obviously the host nation. It's an interesting stat. The last time they hosted the Cup of Nations, they were knocked out in the group stages. Definitely not happening. I don't think it will happen, but that's football. Anything at all can happen. They are coming up against Guinea-Bissau, a team that has a very, very, very poor scoring run. I think they've gone about 7 games without scoring in the AFCON, the worst of any team in the competition. What do you think how do you think this game is going to pan out? How is it going to look like?
Well, I expect Ivory Coast to absolutely dominate possession. I think they are the kind of outstanding team in build-up and possession at this tournament. Although they're kind of one of the slightly older teams, I feel like they've really kind of essentially right in their prime now. Jean-Louis Gasset, the French coach, has got them playing a really good brand of football. They're sort of a possession-orientated 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. They may even be even more attacking because in a couple of games recently, they've played a three at the back, which has enabled them to kind of really load the team with attackers, including playing nominal wingers at wing back. Yeah. So I'm expecting to see them absolutely dominate possession, show their kind of on-ball quality. And equally, Guinea-Bissau are kind of naturally orientated towards not being so much on the ball. They're pretty direct, not quite as direct as Equatorial Guinea, who are the other team in the group, but still a pretty direct outfit. They look to play on the counter-attack, and I suspect they're going to find themselves kind of spending most of the game out of possession and having to play sort of fairly direct fashion. I think that the issue for them is that they also have recently been losing the ball quite a lot in deeper areas. They're one of the worst teams at the AFCON in terms of their volume of losses of the ball in deep areas, and that doesn't mesh particularly well with the Ivorians' sort of fairly high intensity pressing approach. Which, if they do that, I think not only are they going to be creating chances in build up and ball progression, they dribble into the box quite a high volume, they pass into the box at high volumes, but they also are likely to some high turnovers that may lead to chances as well. So hopefully it's going to be a match that sets the tone for a high scoring AFCON, because I certainly think that the way the teams match up suggests that is possible.
What should Equatorial Guinea do to break this non-scoring run? I mean, like you rightly said, they are very direct. Ivory Coast, in the last 14 or so opening games, they are yet to lose. I think the last time they lost an opening game was in 1996 against Ghana. They lost 2-0. Since then, they've not lost an opening game. What should Equatorial Guinea do differently?
I think to be honest, I think they have to sort of embrace their own style of play. I think that the challenge that they have is that they're a young team. They're actually one of the youngest teams of the tournament. They're in transition. I suppose the way in which they've got to try and stop the Ivory Coast is to pack the box essentially and make it as difficult as possible to play through them. The problem is that the Ivory Coast have potentially the perfect kind of AFCON 9 in Sébastien Haller in terms of the fact that he's so versatile, he's creative, he's also obviously an outstanding kind of goal scorer, an aerial threat. He can score in multiple ways in his own right. So that's, I think, is the real challenge here, is that the Ivorians have got so many solutions. If Sébastien Haller starts, but they feel like they need someone a bit more dynamic, they can bring Karim Konate off the bench. They've got quality box-to-box midfielders in Franck Kessie and Sekou Fofana, who both carry significant goal threat. They've got wide players like Simon Adingra and Jeremy Boga. And then obviously, as I mentioned, they've got Sébastien Haller, they've got good fullbacks. I mean, they've just got an embarrassment of riches. And I think for Guinea-Bissau, I think they are going to be under a lot of pressure all game long. It's going to be for them about specific moments and trying to create moments. And whether that is essentially that they perhaps score from a set piece, they score from a long shot. They do engage in a lot of offensive duels. Someone like Mama Balde, if he can get into isolation against one of the Ivorian defenders, as good as they are, perhaps he can create moments for them in that sense. Yeah. But I think that's going to be essentially their main plan, is that someone is going to produce a moment of brilliance in transition against an Ivory Coast team who are going to be dominating possession.
All right, Scott, many thanks to you. I wish we had enough time to get into a lot more specifics. I know you have a lot of stuff in there that you would wish to share, but there's a lot more to come in AFCON Daily. Scott will be joining us a lot more on AFCON Daily to discuss some of the games, give us a tactical analysis, tactical or technical views of some of these games. So please do stick and stay with us every single time. Put on your notification bells if you've subscribed. If you've not subscribed and this is the first time, please remember to subscribe to the channel and enjoy all the beautiful content that we have for you. Thank you very much, Scott. And thank you so much for watching and subscribing and for liking and for sharing with your friends. We'll see you tomorrow with a review of the game and then a preview of other games that will be coming up. Enjoy your day and have a great time.